Hey, thanks for listening to the UDRcast. If you appreciate the kind of in-depth conversation and insight into recovery, make sure to sign up as a member. Most of our members pitch in $5 or $10 a month, the price of a few coffees. To make this happen, you can sign up at the website at Billwardlife.
The UDRcast is not affiliated and does not represent any 12-step fellowship. I, Bill Ward, the host of the UDRcast, will be sharing my experience and my journey of recovery. That does include, but is not limited to, the literature contained in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 Steps. Our guests will be sharing their own path to recovery and what has worked for them. The UDRcast encourages and supports all paths to recovery. Welcome everybody to the UDRcast. UDR stands for Uncover, Discover, and Recover. My name is Bill Ward, and I'm coming to you from the recovery capital of Canada, Calgary, Alberta. Here we are going to discuss everything recovery, different perspectives, different experiences, both with the people I know and with others from around the world. If you resonate with anything you've heard on this episode today, we ask that you share it with anyone who you think may benefit from it. If you have any questions or comments, please find us at billward.life and send us a message in the info section. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. If you are interested in more recovery content, you can find the buttons for the YouTube channel and other social media outlets on the homepage, and you will be redirected to those platforms. We can recover, one person, one family, one community at a time. Thank you. Okay. So, about 5 years ago or so, when I was a firekeeper at the Sundance family that I found through recovery, I was back at the fire, and there was about 12 of us firekeepers sitting at the back, and I didn't know most of these guys. And after about the third day, we built some rapport, we built some camaraderie, and we were all sitting around at the back and just kind of, shooting the shit a little bit, kind of figuring out where we're from and getting to know one another. And the topic came up of, how we got recovered. And all 12 people that were at the back of that fire at the Sundance were all members of one of the 12-step fellowships. The 12-step fellowships brought every one of those guys towards the culture. And then for some of them, the culture became the way, and for some of us, the foundation of the 12 steps remained to be the foundation of recovery, and we enhance it with the cultural practices. We heard our friend Nick talk about we welcome all paths to recovery, and I welcome all paths to recovery. I do have an opinion on what I think works the best, but I won't share that opinion too much tonight. But I do believe that there are certain things that recovery asks for that make it successful so you can live with vitality. One of the lines in our book is, faith alone is insufficient. To be vital, it must be accompanied by self-sacrifice and unselfish constructive action. This idea of faith, right? It's vital, means it's important. But really what faith has given me, it's given me life. It's given me the life that I live today. Yeah, it's vital. It's important to practice this prayer, this meditation, this. More importantly for me, spirituality is looking within myself. That's the most important part of spirituality to me, is looking at what and who I am with a sincere attempt to become who I can be through the faith, the prayer, and meditation, asking my Creator to help me change. And that's really what that song was about. I'm half Nahio or Cree, and I'm half white. My dad is full-blood Cree. I know nobody on his side of the family. He's got 8 brothers and sisters. I know none of them. I know none of my cousins. And on my mom's side of the family, on the white side, I know everybody. First memory I have with my parents is I lived with my dad. I was in Fernie, Alberta. I believe it was Fernie. And the only thing I remember at that age was my dad was smashing furniture, smashing a stereo, and throwing shit and yelling, and he was angry, and he was an alcoholic. and me and my brother would just kind of hide. He never hurt us or did anything like that, but that's my memory. I don't know where my mom was. And then my next memory is my dad gave me and my brother to my grandmother on my mom's side. And I don't know where my mom was. But my mom started showing up every now and then. Unbeknownst to me, my mom had her own mental health issues. She probably struggled with drugs and alcohol, a little bit of her own. She doesn't talk much about it. But she would come around every now and then, and she would bring gifts. She'd bring me bikes. She'd bring us, whatever the gifts were, as she had these visits with us while we lived at my grandmother's. My grandmother taught me unconditional love like I'd never known. And just a quick fast forward, when I finally came into recovery and I didn't want to believe in a God, I didn't say the word God for 2 or 3 years in my early recovery, they told me just pray to something that you love. And I prayed to my dead grandma. And my dead grandma was the one who took the reins in my faith and my spirituality, because she showed me nothing but love and kindness and how to be integral, even as a young boy, and taught me what respect was for myself and for other people. So as my mom would come around bearing gifts, I was so mad at my mom. And all she wanted to do was let me love her. And I hated my mom. Every time she'd come around with these gifts, I made her cry, and I made her cry for years and years. And eventually she got us back. And I was in about grade 3. But what I want to highlight here is my anger from a young age started manifesting big time at a young age. I didn't have my mom. My dad was an alcoholic. I've been shuffled around. And now I'm with my mom again, who I hate. And my anger is intense as a young boy. I end up living with my mom for a little while. We bounce around to her boyfriends, alcoholic boyfriends, and we end up moving in to this little apartment in Ogden. It's a condominium. Her boyfriend didn't live with us, but she had this boyfriend that was super abusive, and he was a hardcore alcoholic. And what I remember from those days was I'd be sitting on the couch watching cartoons with my brother, and my mom would come down the stairwell. It was like this 2-part stairwell, and she'd come down and she'd have black eyes. She'd be beat up. And I'd just look at her and I would think, why? Why do you look like that? And I would be mad at her because she was beat up. And she wouldn't talk about it. She'd hide it and go to work. And she would never leave this guy. His name was Ken. She wouldn't leave Ken. And this Ken guy would come over at night and he'd try to be my dad. And I fucking hated this guy with all of my soul. And I remember these moments like they were yesterday, where he'd get me close to him and he'd smell like the stench of whiskey, and he'd want to be like my dad, and he'd put his face against mine and I could feel his stubble and smell his whiskey. And he was trying to be nice to me, and I just couldn't stand this guy. And I would yell at my mom and ask her to leave this guy, and she would never leave this guy. She was stuck in this relationship, and I didn't know why. And I'm in grade 3, and my brother's in grade 2, and we're watching this every day, every weekend. Ken was an alcoholic. One day, me and my brother come home from school, and all my relatives are there on my mom's side. There's a bunch of cars parked outside, and we walk in the door, and there's my aunties and my grandma and all these people, and my mom's laying in the middle of the floor just sobbing like crazy. And my aunties and my grandma grab us and shoo us into the kitchen, and they didn't say it like this, but they told us that Ken had died. And I later found out that Ken had hung himself. He couldn't imagine life with alcohol, and he couldn't imagine life without alcohol. Ken didn't have the opportunity to find a path to sobriety, like many of our brothers and sisters don't have the opportunity. And there's a lot of people dying out there these days because they don't know what recovery is, or they have a skewed version of what it is, or society has a stigma about it and we can't really talk about it. Why I'm here tonight is because Willie found me somehow, and I'm not afraid to talk about it. I'm not afraid to talk about the government. I'm not afraid to talk about our nations, and I'm not afraid to talk about my own story, and I have nothing to hide. And if I have nothing to hide, then I can be honest and vulnerable with everything in my life. and I can speak the truth. And I really do believe if I work for a Creator and the people work for me. And the proof is here. I'm here today. And of no doing of my own. I dedicated my life to service, and I ended up here. And I accept that. And just like my friend here, when I'm asked to do something, if I have the time, I'm there, no questions asked. Whether there's money involved or not, most of the work I've done in my program has been for free. I have about 25,000 hours of one-on-one time working with alcoholics one-on-one directly. I've gotten to know the minds and the hearts of the alcoholic addict. And I'm not here to talk about the heavy drinker or the moderate drinker. I don't know what a heavy drinker is or a moderate drinker is. I know what an alcoholic is because that's what I am. And that's what I'm going to talk about tonight, is the real deal alcoholic and addict that has the allergy of the body, obsession of the mind, and a spiritual malady that drives it all. And I think far too many times we skirt around the real issues of why people drink or what the issues are, and I'm not afraid to talk about those. As I saw my mom crying on the floor, and I found out Ken had killed himself, I was happy. Because I didn't want him in my life anymore. And as I progressed in my own journey of teenagehood and moved into my own life, my mom got better. She was okay. You know, she was an alcoholic, but she would never admit it, or maybe she was a heavy drinker that looked like an alcoholic. But as I got into my teen years, being half First Nations, looking full First Nations, living in Calgary, going to a Catholic school, I had to be tough as nails. The prejudice that I experienced from a young age was everywhere. Playing hockey, all sports, in my school, everywhere I went, prejudice was there. And I remember my mom telling me when I was young, she's like, Bill, because you're dark, you're going to have a tough time in this world. And I always wondered why. And then I remember times where I tried to wash the brown off my skin because I didn't want to be brown anymore. And that's just a reality. It's not a pity party here. That's just the reality of my life. I ended up fighting my whole life. I've been in hundreds of scraps with my hands, with my fists. My anger was able to come out, and it just built more and more and more anger. By the time I was 17 years old, I was in a treatment center. How I got into this treatment center was my dad, unbeknownst to me, ended up, when he gave us away to my grandma, he went and got sober. He went to a 12-step fellowship and he got sober. He ended up becoming the director of a treatment center in northern Alberta. And my mom was thinking I was going to die because I was such a out-of-control alcoholic and druggie that she had called my dad in spite and said, come and help your son. He's going to die here. And I didn't know. And for me, this alcoholic life was the only normal one. I didn't know any different. I hear people when I go to meetings say, I knew I was an alcoholic because I drank differently than everybody else. Well, where I grew up in Ogden, everyone drank and used drugs the same as me. I didn't really know that I was different. I just thought I was normal like the rest of everyone who was messed up. My dad came down and he, tried to lightly talk to me about going into a path of treatment center where he was running it, and I wanted no part of that. I didn't think I had a problem. What ended up happening is my dad finally pulled his last straw and he said, son, what if I paid you to go to treatment? I'm like, you pay me to go to treatment? And I'm just a 17-year-old degenerate, right? And I'm like, okay, I'll go on one condition. If I can bring a friend, I'll go, right? So anyway, I pick up the phone and I call my buddy Steve, who's a total degenerate just like me, right? I call him up. I'm like, dude, you want to go to treatment? My dad said he'll pay me if I go to treatment. He's like, fuck, let me ask my parents, right? So he goes and asks his mom and dad. Of course they say yeah. So Steve and I get in his car and we start heading to treatment. But before we headed to treatment, we loaded up his trunk with beer and weed. And we drove like 6 hours, 8 hours north up to Bonnyville, Alberta, going to treatment. Showed up a day late, drunk and hungover, and ended up going to that 28-day treatment. It was only 28 days. And I figured it was successful because I came out of there and I quit smoking weed for like a month, and I quit drinking for 2 months. And I went up there not planning on quitting at all, so I figured that was a total success. But I didn't understand anything yet. I wasn't done. I spent the next 4 years 4 years or 5 years or so burning down my life more. In and out of jail, I got into a fight. I almost murdered a guy, and I was drunk, and I didn't know that one decision could have changed the outcome of my life forever. He ended up living, and he didn't show up in court, and I got off the charge. I couldn't stop drinking, and I wanted to stop, and I'd been trying to stop now for a little while, but I couldn't. And I thought I was still picking up the drink. I still thought I had the power of choice, and I would pick up that drink, and I would take the drink. But I learned today that I had no power. I had no power. I was powerless over that first drink. I needed to take that drink because of all the things I had done and all the things that I thought, like I heard today. My emotions, my ideas, and my attitudes drive me to pick up the drink. When I live in the spiritual malady, as an alcoholic, I don't have the choice. The problem with me is if I put it in my body, I'm gone. And I don't know for how long. My last spree lasted 6 years. So anyway, I ended up having a really bad night at 22 years old. And ironically, it was in the same town that I went to treatment 5 years later. I ended up waking up somewhere I never should have woken up, and in a situation I never should have been in. I looked out the door of this hotel. Thank you. And I realized my hotel was way down the road, and I had to walk there. And so I made it back to my hotel. I jumped in the work truck like nothing happened. And I was in that work truck on the passenger seat, and I remember this as clear as day. I prayed for the first time that I can remember. And I begged God, who I didn't care for or believe in, to stop this insanity of me drinking. And I'm only 22 years old. And I begged God to help me not drink again because I fucking was hating life. I didn't want to drink anymore. And to this day, I'm 51 years old. I've never had a drop of alcohol. But why I become so effective in helping people understand this disease, like I heard tonight, because alcohol has nothing to do with it. Has nothing to do with the problem that I suffer. I suffer spiritual sickness, and it needs a spiritual solution. But I didn't know that at 22 years old. There's a line in one of our pieces of literature. It says, we stood at the turning point. I was standing at a turning point in my life, and I'm like, fuck, man. I just want to be happy. I want to be happy, but I got nothing. I don't like who I am. I don't like who you are. I don't have anything. I can't use what I used to get through life, alcohol, anymore because it doesn't work for me anymore, and I just want to kill myself. And I'm like, what am I going to do? And I looked around the world, man. I looked around and I said, you know what? Seems like if you have money and you have stuff and you have all the things that we're told, you can be happy. So I set on a mission to get rich. I was going to get rich. So I started my own company at 23 years old. I built a ground frost removal company in Calgary called Ward's Ground Thaw Services. I did ground thawing using coal, then I made it up into glycol, and I used radiant heat as well. And I was working for ATCO, NMAX, TELUS, Shaw, the city of Calgary, and the government. I had a lot of contracts. I was making good money. And then from there, I went into landscaping and excavating and general contracting. By the time I was 26 years old, I was making about $1 million a year. By the time I was about 30, I was making $2 million. And by the time I was 36, I was making about $3 million a year. So this ghetto kid from Ogden, full of resentment, driven by the pursuit of money. But the only thing I ever got from money and status and the shiny things is I got some relief. I got some relief. I always said, I'm going to do this and I'm going to make a lot of money and I'm going to be happy. And my wife, Shannon, with our 3 beautiful daughters, she was just along for the ride. She said, I trust you, Bill, whatever. And what Shannon had to put up within me was the anger and the control and all the bullshit that comes along with untreated alcoholism. Although I was kind of sober, I still smoked weed and I still did mushrooms and I still did acid. I wasn't sober. I wasn't sober at all. And I wasn't sober because I sought validation from you guys. I needed validation from you. I needed the money. I needed the shiny things. And even while I was married, near the end, I was going to see hookers. I suffer from a spiritual sickness that only a higher power can solve for me, man. So I ended up working this career for many, many years, building up this business, beautiful $1 million house. I had everything you could think of, all my equipment. I had $1 million worth of paid off equipment, and everyone just thinks I'm the shit, and I think I'm the shit. But I'm not happy. There's a line in one of our pieces of literature that says, is he not a victim of the delusion that he can wrest satisfaction and happiness out of this world if he only manages well? The word victim means somebody who's been tricked or duped of a delusion, which is a lie. That when I look at the facts of the lie, I can see that it's a lie, but I still believe it. Of a delusion that I can rest, which means rest is spelled W-R-E-S-T, which means pry, grab, snatch, take. Happiness and satisfaction out of this world if it's only just the right way for me. If I can only have these parts of the puzzle in this right place, I'm going to be happy. Yeah, I've been tricked. I've been tricked by who? Who tricks me? Society tricked me. I saw, when I looked around the world at 22 years old, these billboards and the TVs and the magazines and my teachers back in school. Everyone told me, dude, you go get these things and you go get them for you, and you have the white picket fence and you have the job and you have this money and you fill your bank account. You're going to be happy, man. I wasn't fucking happy, no matter how much money I made. One truck wasn't enough. I needed 10. 10 wasn't enough. $1 million was enough. I needed 2. Like, nothing was enough. Never was there enough of what I thought I needed to be happy. And this delusion that these things were going to do it, right? And it wasn't until I was in recovery where I looked at my whole life and I'm like, dude, it's never made you happy, ever. But you keep thinking it's going to, even in recovery. And then one day I had this epiphany and I'm like, it's never made me happy. I'm not going to care about that anymore. And I quit caring about the money and the status because I actually got my career back. All I wanted when I came to recovery was my career back. And what happened was I was humbled by some really terrible jobs, but they weren't terrible jobs. What I learned about the jobs that I got in early recovery is they needed to be done that way. I got this job where I'm totally broke. I'm 40 some years old. I'm in recovery and I have no money. I'm living in a trailer that I'm plugged into on my foreclosed property that I borrowed back from my ex-wife that she loaned me in resentment because she doesn't want me living on the street. My kids are living with my nanny in the crawl space at her house. And I get a call and it says, Bill, you want to come and work for $20 an hour running lawnmowers, doing some landscaping? I'm like, yeah, man. Because I need to eat. I've been eating like crackers and Kraft dinner and just nothing, basically, for months. So I go grab this job and I show up on the site and I'm the last guy there and there's just a whippersnapper left. So I grab this whippersnapper and I've run crews with 200 men. I've done big jobs my whole life. I worked for Jacobs Engineering and ATCO Sustainable Communities. I know what running crews is like. I grab this whippersnapper and I start whippersnappering around this condo site. This guy comes out in his truck and he drives on the driveway and I think he's a homeowner. And he jumps out of his truck and he grabs this whippersnapper out of my hand. He says, you can't whippersnapper, get the F out of here and go sweep on the street. I was just like, whoa. So I didn't have anything. I don't have any attitude. I don't have nothing. I need $20 an hour, man. I need to eat something. So I go and I grab a broom and I start sweeping on the street. And I'm just in shame and I'm just humbled that I just got kicked off a whippersnapper. Right? But I needed that. 20 years earlier, when I started my company, 25 years earlier, I used to own a small dump truck when I started, and I used to sit in the winter in ground thawing, and I'd look outside at these guys these companies hired me, and I would see their employees working outside in the ditches. They had 6-foot ditches dug by excavators, and it was minus 30 outside, and the ditches would fill with snow, and these guys had to lay these conduits in there, so they would walk around all bundled up. You couldn't see them, just a really shitty job, and they would have to clean these ditches out and put these pipes in the ground because they had to feed their family. And I remember looking out the window and go, wow, poor suckers. I'm glad I don't have to do that. And at 43 years old, that's the job I got. That exact job is what I was doing in my recovery at 43 years old. And I look back at that today and I go, it had to be that way. It had to be that way. Because I did not know enough about humility at all in my life. And Creator was humbling me in a way that I didn't understand. When I made this decision that I'm going to allow God to build with me and do with me as thou wilt, when I got on my knees and I made that decision in my recovery because I had no other choice, If I had another answer, I wouldn't have been on my knees doing anything. But I was out of answers. And I always say if the alcoholic still has the answers, he's drunk. It's when you're out of answers is when you got a choice to move forward in your life. And I was out of answers. So I just did whatever I was told, and I started on my journey. As I kind of progressed in my illness, alcohol worked, and then it didn't work. Workaholism and all the other shit that came with it worked, and then it didn't work. My brother was a missing person. He's an addict alcoholic. He's still in active addiction today. My brother was missing, and he was out in Winnipeg, and my dad had called me. And he said, son, I know you and your brother don't get along, but I'd like you to come with me to look for your brother because he's going to die. And I said, okay, I'll come with you. So my dad drove and I flew. I got a rental car. I had some pictures of my brother. I went around downtown Winnipeg, and it's a pretty shady town. I don't know if any of you have been there, but it's a pretty harsh town. And I went all over downtown showing his picture at the bars and on the streets and everywhere. And then this guy said, I've seen your brother. I'm like, no way, can you take me to him? So he jumped in my rental car, this guy. He took me to the north end of Winnipeg. And I was like pretty blown away at how terrible it is up there. And he said, I think your brother's in this house right here. And it was a rundown crack house. And I'm like, okay, let's go. So we go into this crack house. And one of the guys in the house, people who are in addiction, who have been in gangs and in that lifestyle, they know a lot of times when you're dealing with shady customers, you got to prove you're not a narc by doing dope in front of them. So I went into this house and I had to prove I wasn't a cop by doing dope in front of them, but I was doing dope that I'd never done before. So they handed me a crack pipe, and they handed me some crack, and I toked on that, took a couple hoots, but I hadn't drank in so long. I smoke a little bit of weed, and I can handle that. Like, it wasn't even an issue. I didn't think it was an issue at all. I ended up putting that down and couldn't find my brother in the house. The next day we ended up finding him in a hotel room, just with beer cans and dope all over him, and we got him some help and got him on his way to getting sober. And he's never gotten sober yet though. What had happened when I got back to Calgary, unbeknownst to me, I had set off the body craving of what us alcoholics get. I couldn't stop thinking about it, and it was in my body now, and I didn't know what was going wrong, and all I could think about was getting some of that stuff in me. And I struggled with it. I have a family, and I have a business, and I have all these things, and I just keep thinking about this drug, and I'm like, why, man? You fire people that work for you that smoke this stuff. Why would you want to? And I don't know why. And then one day I went and found some, and I was so guilt-ridden and shameful, but I did it against my own will because I'm an alcoholic, I'm an addict. And I ended up having that first hoot, and it launched me into the fourth dimension like you couldn't believe. It was the answers to all my problems. For me, alcohol worked for a long time, and then it didn't work. Workaholism works for the ego for a long time. Now I found my new solution. And I used that solution for the next 6 years. In the first couple of years, it wasn't too bad. By year 3, it started getting real bad. By year 6, I had lost my house, my family, and I lost everything in my life. My family, like I said, was homeless. My family was torn apart. My wife didn't know what was happening because I was so good at hiding this. She didn't even know I was a drug addict. She didn't know till my second amend to her. I end up living in that trailer on my foreclosed property that I can't pay for anymore. I paid for that house for 10 years, $3,000 a month, and I lost it to the bank. And my dad, I finally go to my dad, and I'm like, Dad, he was sober for 42 years. I said, I need help. I need to go to a meeting or something. And he looks at me and he said, son, I've been waiting for you to say those words for 30 some years. And he took me to a meeting, a 12-step meeting. And I went into that meeting, and I was so angry at life. I was so angry at everything. I just lost everything I thought was important to me. And I just spewed anger. Every time I went to the meeting and shared, I spewed anger to people. And then they would sit with me outside and they would ask me how I'm doing. And they would listen and they would let me spew anger. And I was like, what the fuck is wrong with these people? Like, who does that? Like, and I'm thinking, what do they want from me? Because in my world, you don't do something without wanting something back. And these people didn't want anything from me, man. And I had a hard time with that. But I didn't have any answers. I had nowhere to go, right? If I had 20 more bucks in my pocket, I probably wouldn't be here today. But I had nothing left. And I went to these meetings and I just went and I went and I went. And, you know, part of me when I wasn't there was like thinking, you know, don't go. You know, why listen to these people? Like, you really think this book or, you know, these people are really going to get you sober? It just didn't seem like it would work to me. But I didn't have anywhere to go. And they just kept loving me. And then I went to a meeting one night and I saw a guy up here like me. And I was there with my dad and I'm like, hey, does this guy own the 12 steps? Look at him, right? He looked like really well done and, you know, wearing a suit and looked pretty fancy, man. He didn't look like how I felt. When he sat up here and he started talking. And he said everything of how I felt. He said how he felt before he picked up the first drink. He told me all the behaviors that he was doing while he was in his addiction, while he was in his spiritual malady. And yeah, he explained many things for which I couldn't otherwise account. And when he explained it, I'm like, no way. That's how I felt. That's what made me pick up the drink. That's what made me. And by the time he was done, I was floored. I was like, I couldn't believe that this guy lived my life, but he lived a different life. And I said to my dad, I said, this guy would be a good sponsor, hey, Dad? And I didn't know what a sponsor was. I just heard about him. Just heard you should get one. But I didn't know. I was like, you know, a month sober, maybe a couple months. And he's like, yeah, son, go ask him. And then the biggest fear I ever felt in my life kicked in. And I was so scared to ask for help at the AA meeting I went to. And my dad was trying to convince me, son, this would be a good step for you. And I couldn't do it. I was too terrified. I'm not terrified to go and pull someone out of the car on Deerfoot Trail and road rage and drag him out of his car and beat the shit out of him. I'm not too afraid to go and run up to some random guy and ask him for a fight. I'm not too afraid to do any of these things that are actually so based in fear. But I'm too scared to act in love for myself, which is the scariest thing for an alcoholic addict. And I got enough courage and my dad prompted me and I went up to this guy and I said, you know, I could barely talk. And I said, can you help me? Can you sponsor me or whatever it's called? And then he relieved me by saying, yeah, bro, no problem. I'll help you, man. He says, you meet me every week and I'll tell you what I did. And I'll show you what I did. And I'll be there for you. And I'll love you, man. And you just show up. I said, okay. I still didn't believe it would work. But I believed in this guy. I believed in my sponsor. I believed in this man who I didn't know. I didn't know him. I believed him. I believed that he believed in his God that I didn't believe in yet. So I met with this guy. I went through this material. I started learning about my illness. I started learning that I have an utter inability to leave it alone, no matter how great the necessity or wish. I'm like, fuck, that's me. I learned that I use against my own will. I'm like, that's me. I learned at a certain point the alcoholic or addict has no effective mental defense against the first drink. And I thought about all those times where I thought about the mental defense where I thought, okay, you're going to lose this, you're going to lose that. This is going to happen, this is going to happen. And I wouldn't use that day. But at a certain point, that's not going to work. I'm like, that's me, bro. And then it says, what if he doesn't think at all? I'm like, that's me too. He's like, this is why you need a power, bro. He said to me, you don't need a power just to make you feel good, bro. You need a power that's going to solve your problem. Your problem that you came in here with, Bill, is you're addicted to substances. Your creator, your God, your higher power, your grandma, she can help you solve that problem. He looks at me, he says, but your real problem lies within. He's like, if you don't look at the ideas and the emotions and attitudes that you have, that you run your life on, and bring them to the light and cast them aside, you have no chance at staying sober. I'm like, are you serious? He's like, yeah, bro. I said, okay. So I kept going. I got to a certain part where I had to do this work, where I had to put pen to paper and I had to look at what and who I really was. I wasn't happy with who I was, man. I was very, very broken person. And my anger was a symptom of my spiritual malady. And what I really learned is my anger was actually sadness. My anger is sadness. And I've learned through working with hundreds and hundreds of people in my life today, most of the anger on any person's list is sadness. It's masked by anger. And I was sad, man. I was sad that I didn't have my mom. I was sad that I didn't have my dad. I was sad that I was First Nation. I was sad that I had no money. I was sad and I was pitiful. But that was the turning point. He told me, you got to take responsibility for your actions here. You know, I know you've had a hard life and things haven't gone so well for you in certain areas, but he's like, now you know. Now you take responsibility for your life and for your recovery, and you do something different. And you can't rely on that self-pity. You don't rely on that victim mentality or your self-righteous resentments on who you think screwed your life up. He says the only one you look at from now on is yourself. You resolutely look for your own mistakes, my brother, putting out of mind entirely anything anyone else did to you. And what I learned about, you know what? There might have been people that did 80% harm to me, and I did 20% back to them. And he said, you know what, bro? The 20% is your 100%. We do not look at the harms other people have done to you anymore. This is about your journey and your self-discovery. And so I did that. And I've been continuing to do that for the last almost 9 years. But as I've gained momentum in this path of recovery, my second year sober, I finally went to a powwow. I didn't want to be Indian, as you've heard. I didn't want anything to do with being Indian. I didn't even know an Indian, a First Nations person in my life till I was 43 years old. I knew none. And look at me. I ran from people who had my skin color. Why? Because I thought they were what everyone else told me they were. And when I saw them, they were. They didn't work. They were drunks, they were addicts, they were alcoholics. They were all these terrible things. And I didn't want any part of that. And then I stood beside a powwow drum at my first year recovery because my mind started opening a bit. And I sat there. I heard the beat of the drum. I heard these singers singing, and I felt it. It was in me, Matt. That's me. And I knew that I had to seek my culture because I could feel it in me, Matt. My ex-wife, when I took her to that powwow or the next one, we're not together anymore because of my addiction. I took her to a powwow and she watched the chicken dancers dance. And chicken dancers, they have a certain style of dancing. And she says, Bill, that's how you danced. Because I used to go to the club and I used to dance at the club. And I used to get people coming over and saying, wow, you really have a cool style. And I didn't know what my style was. It's in me, man. Chicken dancing in me. Traditional dancing in me. This stuff's in me. So I started seeking out my culture. I started finding out about myself. Started out learning about my language. I started praying and learning little words, and I started asking my Creator to guide me towards people who could show me the path of my culture. And he did. He started putting these people in my path. Like, I work with a lot of people today, addicts and alcoholics, and all people of all walks of life. I always tell them, you ask Creator for everything that it is that you want. Don't be selfish about it. You ask Creator to bring it to you so you can serve. We watched that movie tonight, boys, at this morning, with Wayne Dyer. And he said, we do this stuff so we can serve. And I've learned through service, I'm able to live my best life. I only served myself. My whole life, I served me. I learned that I never was in a relationship with anybody ever in my life. I've had girlfriends, I've had brothers, aunts, uncles, I've had lots of people in my life that I thought I had a relationship with. Once I did the work that I needed to do in recovery, I realized I had no relationship with anybody but myself. And really what recovery has taught me, it's about relationships. It's about a relationship that I build with my Creator. Through that relationship with my Creator, I'm actually building a relationship with myself. There's the fundamental idea of God is within every man, woman, and child. It's in us, man. It's not out there. I don't need to go look anywhere. I've been looking for a Creator in the women, in the money. I've been looking for God in all the wrong places. He's right here. But he's often obscured by calamity and pomp and worship of other things. He's obscured. He's blocked off. But I feel him sometimes. When I got off that plane and I saw the beautiful view, I felt Creator, man. That's fucking love, man. That feeling I get when I see a sunset, that's fucking love. When I see that little baby on your lap and she's running around and your husband picks her up, that's love, man. That's Creator right there. Another thing that Wayne Dyer said today was, we're trying to get back to what we were. I'm trying to get back to God as I understood him. When did I understand God? I understood God when I was a little baby, when I was a little kid. The journey of life fractures me. It builds the ideas, it builds the beliefs, it builds these things that I tell myself who I am. I'm not the same person that I was when I was in early recovery or in my past life. My Creator came into my heart and made me a different person. He's allowed me to be kind and be loving. He's allowed me to drop my career. I got my career back. I was 2.5 years sober. I was director of operations for a company called Weatherskin Corporation, making $130,000 a year again. But I had worked with so many alcoholics at 2.5 years. I was sitting at my desk one day, and I'm like, I don't want to fucking do this anymore. And to understand that all I wanted was my career back, and to be sitting at my desk and to go, you don't want to do this anymore? What the hell, Bill? Like, this is in my head. This is all you wanted, dude. You're making $130K. You're able to pay all your bills. You got a nice car finally after driving humility vehicles for the last 2.5 years. Like, dude, you've earned this. And I said, I can't do it, man. It's not there anymore. I don't want to make money for people. I don't know how to tell you guys. I just knew that it wasn't my path anymore. So I took my new car and I was on lunch just about a week and a half later, and I'm just driving. And I've been praying and I've been meditating. I've been doing all the stuff. And something said, pull your car over and talk to your higher power. So I pulled over my car on the side of the road on some street in Calgary on my way back to work after lunch. I put the seat back and I prayed to my grandma. And I asked my grandma, I said, Grandma, I know you hear me and I know you know everything that's going on in my life. I know that you know that I don't want to do this job, and I know that you know that I'm worried that I'm not going to be able to pay my bills and take care of the things that I need to take care of, my child support and my rent and stuff. And just as you guys can hear me talking today, I heard my grandma. And she said to me, Billy, it doesn't matter if there's money involved. That's what you do. You go help. So I gave my notice. 2 weeks later, I had no job. I went on EI. That was about 3.5 years ago-ish, maybe 4. And I started on this path. I had already been serving Creator. And then I made a full commitment to serve my Creator like I never did before. I put all my trust in my Creator's guidance. And he's led me so many places. I could sit here for hours and tell you the stories that he's done for me. And he's given me everything I've needed. I have a new employer today. His name is God. His name is Creator. He exists up here. He's an unsuspected inner resource. There's a little part of him right here. And he's my guide today. and I work for a Creator. And I come here today and I play the role that I'm assigned. The role that I'm assigned is I bring love to this room. I bring love to these boys, and I show them what I have done to overcome my spiritual sickness so that I never drink again. And I never hurt anybody again. And I'm able to serve and forgive and heal myself through the work that I do for you. I work for God and the people, and God and the people work for me. I really want to say thank you to everybody who's supported my journey. I met a lot of people who listen to my podcast, and I can't possibly know how many people my podcast is reaching around the world. And I just started it because I wanted people to understand what this crazy thing does and what the solution is to it. And so I put myself out there, and it's taken me here. And I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Well, I do a little bit. But I wake up every morning and I ask my Creator, I ask Him to guide me. This is how I pray every morning right now. It changes. I ask my Creator, I say, thank you for this beautiful day. Creator, I ask for your guidance and your strength and your clarity of mind. I ask for your forgiveness. I ask that you show me what my next step is to be and where I can serve you the best today. And I never say, Creator, give me. I say, Creator, can I have yours? It keeps me small, because an alcoholic like me, I can't afford to be thinking I'm doing anything. I need to stay small, and I need to stay humble, because I need to be able to serve. And if I'm relying on this power, and this power is so powerful, you guys, you trust it, and you won't trust it at first, and it won't make sense. But common sense will thus become uncommon sense. The way that you live, your life will be so different. Your brains can't comprehend the way that you will feel and live in this world if you put your fucking weapons down. And the weapon is anger. The weapon is self-pity. The weapons are all these things that you're going to learn. You lay those down and you go through the pain of the shitty jobs, of not having the old lady. You go through the pain of people saying shit to you, and you bite in your tongue. And you learn the lessons, because the only pain that you feel is a lesson of the ego, because love has no pain. It's real. And it's there for you, and it's in you. And you got to dig in and do what's fucking hard. Recovery's hard work. And you got to do what's hard, and it'll make your life easy. If you do what's easy, live in resentment, take advantage of people, do these easy things that we can all do, your life is going to be hard. There's two kinds of suffering in this world. The unremitting suffering of taking, or the pain of growing through not getting what you want, building some character. So I'm just grateful to be able to speak here today. And I thank you guys all for listening. And if anybody wants my number or anything, I'm here. I want to thank Willie, and I want to thank Luke, and I want to thank everybody from Trinity, the boys who inspire me. That's who inspires me, man, right there. People ask me, who inspires you, Bill? Dude, you do, man. Everybody does. When you live a life of service, everyone's inspiring to you. So I just want to thank you all for being here, and then thank you all for bringing the message and just carrying something today that can make this world a better place. My goal is to help our First Nations brothers and sisters in this country, and all people. But the medicine wheel is what I'm focused on. It's all my relations. It's not just about Indians or whites or Chinese or black. It's all people, man. We all bleed the same color. That's what it's about. It's about forgiveness. Forgiveness and love. That's what I tell my guys to work on. You pray to love and forgiveness. Don't even say God. You say love and forgiveness. I ask for your guidance today. Because the God idea has a certain weird thing with some of us. But love is love. Forgiveness is forgiveness. And you don't need to forgive. You ask for God's forgiveness for whoever needs it. That'll come down the road. So thank you, everybody. Hi. Thank you for tuning in to the UDRcast. We hope you have enjoyed this episode. The viewpoints and the opinions expressed today were solely of the individual sharing them. If you resonated with this episode, please follow us and share this link with anyone that may benefit from it. please visit us at Billwardlife to see everything that we have going on. We can recover, one person, one family, one community at a time.